Anatomy, middle ear, in 2 minutes.
It's timing.
Here we go. So, you've got your eardrum, umbo, malleus handle, neck, most of the malleus head, behind the scutum, coming down to the midline. You've got your tendon coming through. Then we're going to draw on the incus, malleoinguinal joint, long process of incus, coming round, parallel to the malleus. Comes down onto the stapes. Stapes is in the oval window. You've got the anterior crus, posterior crus coming up. Coming behind that, so there's our tendon. You've got the facial nerve. So facial nerve here, big boy, coming down and out through the stylomastoid foramen, forming the superior and the posterior boundary of your oval window. Okay? Coming at the same level as the facial nerve will be the pyramidal process. Coming off that will be stapedius tendon, okay? Because stapedius is supplied by facial nerve. Okay? The tendon comes through cochleariform process, which then runs anteriorly up through the eustachian tube. Okay? So in the eustachian tube, the semi-canal, because there's two things in it, you've got the canal of the tensor tendon or tensor tympani and the eustachian tube, right? So coming off the facial nerve, you've got the chorda tympani. So the chorda tympani about 7 millimeters from the stylomastoid foramen, comes off, runs over, maybe I'll use a different color, runs over the long process of the incus and under the malleus, right? And then out. Always above the tensor tendon, right? So what about the space up here? Well, actually, what we can talk about is you've got the anterior tympanic spine and the posterior tympanic spine. So between the two, you've got the pars flaccida, between the scutum and the lateral process of the malleus. So this is the pars flaccida. And the other part between anterior and posterior tympanic spine will be the sulcus and the annulus and the pars tensor, right? So the pars flaccida is the anterior lateral border of Prussac space, right? Which is floored by the neck of malleus, and then two pouches, anterior pouch of von Trolsch, posterior pouch of von Trolsch. Anterior one is often sealed, posterior one is open. If you want to ventilate those areas, air has to come in through the eustachian tube, underneath the malleus, and then up towards us through posterior pouch of von Trolsch into Prussac space, right? If you want to ventilate your epitympanum or your mastoid, the air has to go through this space, under here, and through here. So to do that, it's going through between the tendon and the fossa incudus, and that area there is called the isthmus, which has the long process of incus running through the middle of it, okay? So that's the only way you can get air through there, because at the front here, running anteriorly from the tensor tendon, is this fold running in this plane. And that fold is called the tensor fold, okay? And it can be variable. It can be horizontal or it can be vertical. But between the two, you've got the supratubal recess, which is always smooth, and the anterior epitympanum, which is always rough, okay? Like the rest of the mastoid. And as I was saying earlier, the anterior epitympanum tapers towards the eustachian tube, so you've got to be careful when dissecting up there because the middle cranial fossa is coming in. Whereas at the back here, it opens up into the adductus and then into the mastoid. In the mastoid, you've got your sigmoid sinus and your jugular bulb. You've got your tegmen and you've got your facial nerve. There is your mastoid. Okay, so as you're coming in, what's the first thing you look for? Your lateral semicircular canal. Once you've found your lateral semicircular canal, you can find your short process of incus. Once you find your short process of incus, you know where the facial nerve is. You can make your facial recess. Where's the facial recess? It's that triangle between chorda tympani, facial nerve, and whatever bone you leave for your buttress. Round window will be a little bit posterior, about millimeter, south millimeter posterior. of the oval window. It's at a different plane, so it's 90 degrees, 90 degrees, 90 degrees from the oval window. And it gives you these different spaces. So you've got the cerviculum, you've got the ponticulus, and between them the sinus tympani, just under here. South of that, you've got the sinus subtympanicus with the fustus, which is a smooth bit of bone which takes you to the round window. And eventually at the bottom here, you've got the funiculus. Between the funiculus and Jacobson's nerve, the tendon, and the cog, which just separates anterior and posterior epitympanum, they're all in a line in the center of the ear. So there's a good landmark to use, okay? Cog, cochleariform process, Jacobson's nerve, funiculus. One line, London Underground through the middle, okay? So areas, we've got retrotympanum, we've got hypotympanum, this is the protoniculus, protympanum, and then epitympanum. Okay? Right, one last thing. Internal auditory canal runs in line with the EAC. So EAC, IAC, in line with each other. So going into the page, right? So it's going to be roughly like that, okay? And you've got 4 nerves. 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Running into the brainstem. So what are the 4 nerves? Well, clearly these are going to be the vestibular ones, because when we're doing translab, they're the first nerves we encounter, right? And that's where the tumor is, right? So inferior vestibular, superior vestibular. And it makes sense, because where's the vestibular organ, right? Well, here's your lateral canal, here's your superior canal, here's your posterior canal, right? And they all go into the utricle and the saccule and so on. So obviously, those nerves are going to be at the back, right? What's this one going to be? Cochlear nerve, because what's this? The cochlea, right? So it makes total sense. Of course it's going to be there. And what's this? The facial nerve, because as we saw earlier, facial nerve comes up through there, round the first genu, second genu, and out. Okay? So facial nerve, 7 up, cochlear nerve, coat down, inferior vestibular, superior vestibular, in line with the ESC. That's the anatomy of the middle ear. A little over 2 minutes.